Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Porter, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly webinar series where we cover a variety of topics that may be of interest to libraries. We broadcast the show live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. But if you're unable to join us on Wednesdays, that's fine. We do record the show as we're doing today, and it will be available for you to watch later at your convenience. And I will show you at the end of today's show where you can access all of our show recordings. Both the live show and the recordings are free and open to anyone to watch. So please do share with your friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, anyone you think might be interested in any of the topics we have on NCompass Live. For those of you not from Nebraska, the Nebraska Library Commission is the state agency for libraries, so similar to your whatever state library. So we provide services and resources and training, consulting and databases and grants and all sorts of things to all sorts of libraries in the state. So you will find shows on NCompass Live for potentially for all types of libraries. Public, K-12, corrections, museums, archives, historical societies, et cetera. Really, our only criteria is that it is something to do with libraries. We bring in guest speakers on NCompass Live often from all across the country, but we also have Nebraska Library Commission staff that do presentations for us about programs and resources and things we do through the Library Commission, or just to bring you important info and tips and whatnot. And that is what we have with us today is Andrew Sherman. Sherm, good morning, Sherm.
Good morning, everybody.
And he is our library technology support specialist is his title here. He's our tech guru, I like to say, here in our library development department, and helps libraries with all of their networking issues and anything computer or techie related. And today he's going to talk about something that is something that happens a lot at libraries. I know it's a service we all offer, and you may need some more tips on how to provide printing, scanning, and faxing to the people who use your library. So I will let you take it away, Sherm.
All right. Well, in my travels this summer, assisting libraries with our Medica grant, I've had a lot of questions about from libraries where they're thinking about buying a new printer. So talked with Krista, and we thought it was probably time to maybe talk about printing, scanning, and faxing at the library. So my presentation is going to kind of walk through recommendations for what kind of printers, copiers to buy. That's kind of a blur these days, as they tend to be all the same device, which is nice. And then we're also going to cover maybe some best practices for doing the printing and assisting your patrons with printing in the library. So starting out, printing is kind of the hot app now, I would say. We have a lot of people that don't even have computers at home anymore. They do everything on their smartphones. So if they don't have a computer, they probably don't have a printer. In the old days, we had a copier, a fax, a scanner, and a printer as separate devices. They're kind of all built to one now. The other problem kind of for having a printer at home is the ink and the toner prices are just absolutely ridiculous. What HP charges now is just, it's crazy. I still got my Canon printer at home, and I can tell you when it gives up the ghost, I would be reluctant to replace it just for the fact I can go to my library and print when I occasionally need to. And that's the other thing with, these days our documents are so easily exchanged digitally that printing has really declined. So the need for people that have printers at home, they're just not doing it anymore. So on the occasion they do need to print something, we're seeing them show up at the libraries where they're like, hey, I need to print this return label for Amazon. That's the one I used to see a lot. Yep. Or things like that. And they just need to come in, print one page, and they're kind of out the door. Faxing, back in the day, we used to be big for faxing. Some libraries I've visited have actually, their fax machine gave up the ghost, or they saw a big price increase to still have that old analog phone line for their fax machine, and the need for it was just not there, and they dropped it to save the money and not support faxing anymore. We have a lot of people that don't know how to print or scan. They may be of the generation where they came up on the phone. You know, they talk about the young folks being, you know, the most technically astute, but they've come up in a generation where printing can be a very rare thing. You just don't hardly do it. So when they do need to print something, they're coming to the library for help, just like everybody else. One of the things I used to hear all the time is, hey, I'm in a hurry, I need to get this printed out. My inkjet printer either A, refuses to print because one of my color cartridges is empty, even though I just want black and white. It's run out of ink, or I haven't used it in a long time and I went to fire it up and
It's all
it's
dried
not
out.
working. The print heads are clogged, the ink is dried out, and I got to get this printed. That was one I heard all the time, and I still hear it today. And we'll talk about inkjet printers. As you can probably guess, I'm not a fan. And the other one that was fun when you're a librarian and you're standing there with them at the printer, scanner, copy, or fax, you usually got to hear the whole story of why this document is important and why they need to fax it. So you may get a whole legal brief, a whole medical brief, and you know, sometimes you just wish they would just hand you the stuff, you can do it for them, and we can both get on with our lives. But that happens too, and that still happens. Printers, copiers, they're kind of pretty much the same thing these days. So I have a lot of libraries, my libraries included. We had our old HP laser black and white printers, and those things are just indestructible. They just go and go and go and go. And unless yours is like actually broke, if it's still working well, my gosh, keep it, keep using it. They're built like a tank. They're easy to maintain. If you're a DIY person and you're big on YouTube videos that show you how to do this stuff, whatever model of printer you have, I guarantee there's a YouTube video that will walk you through how to install the maintenance kit, which is usually a maintenance kit. If you haven't done one, the rollers in the printer that feed the paper through, they have a rubber bushing that will wear out or get dry and brittle over time, and then it'll start to paper jam or not feed paper. It's pretty easy to do. Again, you can find the video on how to do it. The other thing you run into is your fusers. So in a laser printer, the way it works is that black toner paper is black toner is applied to your paper, and then it goes through a fuser, which is pretty much just a heater that then kind of melts and fuses that toner to the page. And they do wear out over time and do need to replace. So a lot of people think their printer's broken because, hey, we changed ink cartridges, we're still getting streaks and smears. That's a good indication that the fuser needs to be replaced. And if you can still find one for your printer, generally to the older printers, the parts tend to be cheaper. And if you can keep that thing going, do. And the big bonus for that is a lot of the printer manufacturers now have added chip technology to their, whether it's inkjet or toner, where they track that cartridge. So they know whether it's a factory made cartridge or whether it's something that's been sent to recycling. Some companies bought it, has refilled it, and it's put it out as what we call reman or remanufactured toner inkjet cartridge. And what they've done now is if they recognize that, they will not allow it to work in their printers to force you to buy new stuff. It's the pets, because especially what they're charging these days. So if you have those old printers, those old copiers, and you can still put remans in them, that can save you a fortune over having to buy brand new factory stuff. So if you've got that old printer copier that's still going strong, my advice is keep it as long as you can. If it's an issue where maybe you got a grant or something to get a new printer and you want to, if you want to keep that old printer as a backup, so if you have trouble with your current printer and you have that old backup you can bring online, or maybe you make that just dedicated to your black and white prints. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit too, about maybe having defaults set up for just black and white and defaults set up just for color. So even if it's just a black and white printer, if you can keep using it for that with the low cost of using the reman cartridges and stuff, and almost all the printing we do in the library tends to be just, you know, forms, tax forms, things like that. If you can keep cranking out those black and white pages super cheap, why wouldn't we do it? Speed isn't such a big deal with laser printers. Obviously the new ones can dump a lot more pages fast. But again, our patrons tend to just walk in and they just want to print a page or two. So having an older, slower laser printer just is not that big of a deal. So if you have reached the point where you've got to buy a new printer copier, pretty much these days you can get an all-in-one. So, or what they may call them as MFPs, multifunction printers. So that's got the document feeder on top for scanning and faxing. Can print, copy, scan, fax if you're using that, and that's really the way to go these days. There's really no need to have the separate devices, you know, a scanner, a printer, a copier. Just go with the all-in-one device. It'll obviously saves you a lot of space. You're using one type of toner cartridge to do all this stuff, which makes life a lot easier. And I don't know why, if you're talking about purchasing something, we would not go with that MFP or all-in-one device these days. Avoid inkjet printers. I'm a Star Wars fan, so there's my proverbial graphic of one of my favorite lines.
Perfect.
The inkjet printers tend to be just a total, let's just take advantage of our customers and just milk them for all the money we can. They may have a really low purchase price because they're going to make up for it, and where they're going to make up for it is what they're going to charge you for the ink cartridges. It used to be when you bought a new printer, you got a full set of cartridges with it that were full all the way. What some printer vendors do now is when they sell you that new printer, they have what they call starter cartridges. So actually it's a cartridge that barely has any ink in it. It's enough to set it up and do the configuration where you run it through the configuration thing where it aligns the heads and all that, and then you maybe get a few pages out of it, and guess what? It's out of ink. So it used to be, at least when I bought the thing, I got a full ink cartridges. Now they're not even doing that. They're going to make you buy the expensive stuff as quick as they can. Obviously, they're just outrageous what they're charging. HP's prices are absolutely ridiculous for what they want for ink cartridges. This maybe isn't such an issue for the libraries, but you know, a lot of people would come in at home, they didn't use their inkjet cartridges in printer in 6 months. The cartridges are dried out, the heads are clogged. You can try and run it through the cleaning process, which is kind of a double-edged sword because it uses up a bunch of ink as it tries to force it through the inkjet heads to clear them. It's just terrible. In the early days, we used to be able to refill those ink cartridges. I used to, Sam's used to sell a great refill kit that had everything you needed to refill your ink cartridges. And I used to do that all the time with my first inkjet printer. And eventually you can maybe get 3 or 4 reuses out of a cartridge and you'd have to pitch it and go spend the money for the new one, but at least we could do that. Again, just like they've done with laser cartridges, they put chips in them, they track them. If it's not a factory chip, or the chip tells the printer that, hey, I'm empty, I'm not full, even though you've refilled it, it's not going to work. And it's turned into such a scam on people now. I just do not like the inkjet printers. There's people that argue that if you're doing photos with, you know, the photo paper and stuff, they'll give you a higher quality picture than a laser. That may be the case, but I've never had anybody come in my library and want to use the library printers to print photos. That's more of an at-home kind of thing. I just don't see any advantage to having an inkjet printer in the library, especially as affordable as laser technology is these days. They tend to be very cheaply made. They know that these tend to be at-home users that are only using them occasionally, so they're not built for durability. They're not built for high use. Put them in an environment where they're going to get used a lot, they're not going to hold up, they're not going to last. And I just can't say it enough. I loathe inkjet technology. And like I said, unless you have a special thing where you're doing photos where maybe you could make the argument you're getting a higher quality print, I just would avoid them. I just would not even go there. Lasers, they have the best price per page. They're obviously much faster for printing. And in my opinion, if you're printing to paper, whether it's black and white or color, they're going to give you really, really good quality. The HP used to be kind of like, I don't know if you remember the old days when people said you never got fired for buying IBM. Well, you used to never get fired for buying HP. Their stuff was rock solid. It was the best. They still make a good product, just what they charge for their consumables, and now that they require you to register the printer and have an internet connection, they have some really awful subscription consumer consumable programs they try and get you to sign up for that. Yeah, they're just doing so much to take advantage of their customers. I just have a hard time recommending HP anymore. The Brother line of MFC printers, they currently make the printer that is most recommended if you do like best top 10, small office printers. The Brother printers come up at the top of the list almost on everybody's list anymore. They do some stuff with the cartridges, kind of like what each HP does, but they're not quite so onerous in it, and their prices tend to be a little cheaper for their consumables too. So if you ask me for a printer recommendation, it's going to be one of the Brother multifunction copy
Someone
printers.
does have a question, because you did mention earlier about some the old like inkjet printers are more for home use because they don't get used as much. Are the Brother ones good for this constant day in and day out use that libraries might be using them for? They can
Not
stand up
if
to
we're
that kind of use?
talking inkjets, no, but the Brother lasers,
Yeah,
yes. So we're talking lasers here.
right.
I am never going to recommend an inkjet printer for library use.
Right. Yeah, no, they're asking is the laser ones this one, because you said you'd mentioned definitely not for, and they want to make sure that something that people can be using constantly. Will these laser ones work?
Yeah, the
That
Brother ones are good. They're like at the top of everybody's. If you go out and Google top 10 small office all-in-one printers or multifunction copiers, the Brothers come up at the top of the list constantly. They really, I think, are probably your best deal on the market now. They have an affordable entry price. Their consumables, well, everybody's gotten kind of pricey. They're not terrible. And I've recommended some libraries. I've seen a lot of libraries purchasing the Brother MFC line of lasers. So they're really, really good. The other thing you really want to make sure of is you can buy a little multifunction printer, but what happens a lot if you start at the entry level for scanning, it's just a scanning bed where you have to flip the lid, put the page in, scan that page, take it out, put the next page in. Maybe for home use, that might be okay. At the library, you're going to have people bringing in a stack of documents they want to scan. Please, please, please do not make them do put the page in, take the page out, put the page in. Get something, step up to the level of printer where it offers a multi-page scanner on the top of the printer. So they can put their stack of documents in, it runs it through the scanning process and either makes their copies, does their fax, whatever it is they're doing. Make sure that you have that multi-page document feeder on the device. The other thing that I've seen a lot of libraries doing, all the large libraries I've worked at do this. Their copiers, printers were all leased through a business equipment company. If your town or village, if you're at the point where you're looking at getting a new copier printer for the library, check in with your village, city, town office, see if they already have a contract with a business equipment company and are leasing their copiers from them. You may be able to step right into that contract at the library. Some of these contracts are really a good deal. What we had at my last library is we actually had a contract that covered all the consumables. So we paid a monthly lease for the copier, and then there was a per page part of the agreement where it covered so many black and white and color pages printed, and if we exceeded that number, there was just an additional charge per page. They would get an alert when the device was running low on toner, and they would come out and change it, and if we had any issue with the printer, we call them, their tech was on site to fix it. It just made for a very hassle-free offering to be able to offer really nice high-speed printing and copying to our patrons, and it was very affordable. It was actually I thought, surprisingly affordable for the level of service we got. So that's something to consider. I've seen a lot of libraries taking advantage of that, and I really, really recommend it. Now, if you're a small library in a rural area, you may not have that service available, and that, that's life, that's the way it is. But the business equipment companies are so prevalent for supporting businesses in the area that I'd be surprised if you wouldn't be able to find something that they'd be willing to give you a quote and provide that level of service to you. The other thing we see in a lot of the newer printers is, especially if it's an office printer, is they have possibly an application on them that allows you to print directly from your phone, or the printer emits a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth signal, kind of a short range signal just by the printer, and you can connect to it on your phone and print. It used to be it was just where you establish a connection and print from your phone. Some of these now are requiring that you download an application on your iPhone or your Droid, and you have to have the app installed on your phone to be able to utilize it. It's not the end of the world. It used to be a little easier. What I did when I'm at the desk and people come in and want to print from their phone or something, we usually had a little sheet or a little laminated page that were instructions on how to connect to the printer and or download the app. We can hand that to them, but then I would also say my business card is right here. If you just want to email it to my email address, I can print it for you. And 9 times out of 10, they didn't want to hassle with the connecting to the printer, downloading the app. They're like, they just forward the email to me. I'd open the PDF, print what they wanted, they'd pay me, and then we'd both get on with our lives. And that may, in my opinion, be by far the easier way to support people coming in and wanting to print from their phones and tablets and things. So it's really up to you. It's kind of a nice to have, especially if it's included with the device that you have. And again, if you have people that maybe they think what they're printing is too sensitive to share with the librarian, so that they want to be able to do it themselves, having that little laminated sheet of the instructions on how to be able to successfully print from their phone is a great thing to have sitting at your desk that you can just hand them when they want to do that. Printing best practices. So pretty much all the libraries I go to charge for printouts. I commonly see these days 10 cents for black and white, and then anywhere from 25 to 50 cents for color, and that's per page. One thing I highly recommend is that you have that signage, right above your printer. I even used to put it on the screens on my desktop screens on my computers in the library, where it said right on the computer screen that this is what printing costs, and you will be charged for everything you print. So when you have the individual who wants to argue with you about stuff, you can say, hey, you sat down at our computer, that's on the screen, you accepted those terms when you use the computer. I'm not going to argue with you about,
no
you didn't know
surprises.
you were supposed to pay for your printouts. So that's just kind of a nice thing to have, but definitely at least have something hanging up or hanging on your printer. It says, we charge, no exceptions, and this is the price. It doesn't mean they're not going to stand there and argue with you, but at least you have your process, your prices documented, and they're not going to be able to go. Some libraries just have their copier printer out in the middle of the library, and you're kind of on the honor system. You can print your stuff, and you're supposed to take it up the desk and print for it. At my libraries, we always kept the printer by the desk where we could kind of keep an eye on it and make sure that we were getting paid. We didn't make any money off our printing. That was just covering our cost. And I think that's reasonable. That we're a library, it's okay to charge people for it. We're not charging the point that we're making money at it. We're just charging them enough to cover our costs so we can continue to offer the service. Another thing I like to do, especially on the public patron computers at a minimum, is when I set up the printer on the PC, I set it to default to black and white, especially if you're charging different prices for black and white and color. That way, when anything they print is going to default to black and white. They avoid the I didn't need color argument. What happens when you print like a web page that has hyperlinks? I don't know if you've seen the text is blue. Well, if you're doing like the lease agreement for your copier printer from business equipment, and that printer's keeping stats of black and white and color prints, if that page has any color on it, like that little blue hyperlink, that's a color print, and they're going to be counting that against you as a color print and or charging you a color print price. Even if it's the one little word in blue on the entire page, that is a color print. By defaulting all your printing to black and white, that all goes away. You know, worst case, maybe the patron prints a picture in black and white, and then they get it and they come up to the desk, go, I want this in color. Oh, sorry, you know, it was the 10 cents black and white page. You want to toss it in the trash and hope them do their color one, they're going to pay you 25, 50 cents for. Great. But you avoid that argument where they came in and printed something and come to the desk and you tell them it's 50 cents a page, and they're like, well, I didn't need color. It's not my fault it printed color. So that's a great default to have in place. I really, really like it. That kind of leads us to the second thing that I think is even better, where we'll set the printer up twice on our public patron computers. We'll set it up where we'll put B&W black and white on the printer name, and then we'll set up a second time where we put color on the printer name. And so what we're doing is, if you select the black and white printer, that's defaulting to black and white. If you select the color printer, that's defaulting to color. And what's nice is it makes it very easy for our patrons to select whether they want black and white or color printing at the computer, because they don't have to know how to go into printer preferences in Windows and find in some of the printer manufacturers where they put how you select black and white and color can be hidden, kind of buried. Some of them don't even call it black and white, they call it grayscale, which confuses people.
Yeah.
Some of them may call it economy print, which confuses people. But if you make that printer setup twice, all they have to know how to do when they go to Windows to print, you just click that little down arrow and you can select which printer you're using. That avoids that whole workout of having to know how to go into the printer preferences and change how you want your stuff to print. So that's another thing that I do at all my libraries. If I come out to your library and assist you with installing new patron public computers, I'm going to bring this up, say, would you like to set that up this way? It makes it super easy for your patrons to select whether they want black and white or color. I think it's a great thing to do, and I do it at every opportunity I have. The one got you is with Windows 10 and Windows 11. Well, for whatever reason, Microsoft decided that they would automate which printer is your default printer. And I cannot figure out any rhyme or reason to how Windows decides which printer is the default.
Yeah, how do they know which
it
one?
It seems mostly to be whatever printer you used last becomes the default printer. Sometimes it just changes and I have no idea why. But you can go into the Windows options, and where you go into to add a printer, there's an option to allow Windows to select my default printer. You can turn that off. And again, when I set up these this duplicate printer for black and white and color, the black and white is my default printer, and I turned off that feature in Windows to manage my default printer. So I never have to worry about it. Like, so the customer prints something black and white, then prints something in color. Well, now Windows says, oh, last thing you print is color, this is the default. They go back to print black and white, and it comes, yeah. I can't figure out how Windows does that management. So I always like to shut it off on the public patron computers and use my dual setup going forward. A lot of the large libraries use print management software. There's umpteen different vendors out there offering it. Usually I see it's part of their, maybe they have the full Envision suite and stuff like that. For small libraries, I think the print management software just adds a level of complication and cost that I can't really justify. It's just easier, I think, for us to just use what Windows provides and go from there. For large libraries where they require you have money in your library account and stuff for printing, then obviously it's necessary. But for a lot of our small libraries, I just don't see that print management software is worth the expense and the complication to do that for customers. And this kind of gets back into where I would keep my business card with my email address handy, where people would go to one of our printers to print it, and they come up and they're like, I cannot figure out what I'm supposed to do because we have this complicated print management software in there. And I would be like, oh, is it, do you have an email? And again, they would email it to me, I would print it, they would pay me, I would put it in the cash register, hand them their printouts, and we'd be done. So
everybody's happy.
you know, for a large library, print management software is probably going to be present. Again, it adds a level of complication that just none of our patron was not a regular and didn't understand how it all worked. It just really slowed the whole process down.
I know I see that used a lot also in like academic libraries.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. You've got students who are there are in the library and they're constantly using that, so they know how to use it because they are doing it like every week for a paper or for whatever. But for a small public library, which is what we have a lot of here in Nebraska, it's a whole different environment, a whole different.
Yeah, I unless you're a very large library, I just can't see really any need for it. Or as you said, Chris, an academic library. One thing that we used to do at McConnell, at the larger libraries I worked at, is you can go on Windows, you can enable what we call the banner page. And so at the two larger libraries I worked at, what we would do is enable the banner page. So whenever you would print something from one of our patron computers, the first thing it would print was a banner page that said, this printout came from computer public 01. And then we had identifying numbers that were visible from the front desk on each of the public computers. Somebody would come up to our desk to get their printouts. We could ask them what computer they were at. They wouldn't know, but they could turn around and look and they could say, oh, I was at computer number 2. So we could look through what we had sitting at the desk, find the banner pages from public 02, and then we were able to separate print jobs as people printed and things came in, and it just made life really easy. And on that banner page, we could even keep a running count of how many pages they had printed. So when they came to the desk, we could see you printed 50 pages. That's, you know, 50 times 10 cents, they would pay us. And it worked really, really, really well. So if you're at a library where you have multiple computers and a lot of people printing, enabling that banner page to be able to segregate those print jobs. And we didn't charge them for the banner page. That was for our ease and use of ability. So the banner page, we didn't charge them for. And it worked out really, really, really well. Again, something to think about. A lot of the little libraries I'm at, where, you know, they're sitting right there and the librarian is right there, maybe the banner page isn't necessary and you don't want to waste, you know, the paper and the toner on that banner page, that's fine. But at the libraries are at where we had, you know, 20 computers scattered through the building and the prints all came to the big printer copier behind our desk, that was a very affordable, very easy solution rather than having to look at getting very expensive print management software. Two other recommendations. Anytime I set up patron public computers for a library, I ask if we can install the Adobe Acrobat Reader. People kind of got away from using it because the browsers these days have a PDF viewer kind of built into them. But what I have discovered is, while they may do a really good job at displaying the PDF, they don't do such a good job of printing the PDF. This can really come into play when somebody's got one of those PDFs where people have made the fields, where you can fill the fields in on the PDF before you print it. The viewers, the PDF viewers in the browsers don't handle those well, or they let you complete the fields and then they can't print them right. By having Adobe Acrobat Reader, and it's free, there's no charge for it, installed on the computers, you just can avoid a lot of PDF printing issues. If that document has been opened by the Adobe Acrobat Reader, I can guarantee you everything's going to work right from the start, from day one. You're just not going to have issues with it. The other thing is, and if you've been helping patrons with printing for as long as I have, print preview is your best friend. So when you go up and do the print, you get a little preview screen that kind of shows you what it's going to look like. And what's great about print preview is you can see what's going to print before you print it. Obviously, print preview. So like you'll have customers that'll come in and they just want to print a web page, but what they don't realize that if they print the web page they're looking at, they're going to get the 3 pages of ads that are included with that web page. So when you go into print and then you're seeing the print preview, you can actually see what's going to print. You can scroll through it and you can actually select the pages you want to print. So if they just want that first page of the website they're at, you can say, instead of all, depending which browser you're in or where you're printing from, you can put the page number of the page you want, or you can do a range. You can say 1 to 2, 5, 6, and those are the only pages that are going to print. So they're not paying for ads or stuff they don't want. Some websites you can bring up and view their content, but if you try and print it, they actually don't allow it to be printed. You have to actually have one of their paid subscriptions or accounts. So if you're seeing print preview, you'll realize you're not going to get a printout of what you're seeing on screen, and you can, say, oh, they're not, that we can view it, but they're not going to let us print it. We're going to have to go find this somewhere else. So take advantage of print preview. It's your best friend. I know we have a lot of patrons who just come in, they bring it up and they print it, and that's when you have to assist them, is after they've already done it wrong once. And that's life, that's what it is. But when you go to help them out, take advantage of that print preview screen, so you can see what you're going to get and you can select the pages you want to print. This is invaluable at tax time. I don't know, I assisted lots of people with printing the tax form they needed. And as you know, the IRS likes to embed all the instructions in that form. So it's a 1-page form, and then it's got 5 pages of instructions on how to fill it out. And all they want is the form. So when they would come up and say, hey, I need assistance printing this tax form, I could bring it up, go to print preview. I said, do you need the instructions? And if they said no, then I could just print the page that was the form and we were done. I didn't print 5 or 6 pages and charge them for it, where they'd like turn around and say, well, I didn't need the instructions. I do this every year. And it just, again, just keeps life simple. People get what they want. I'm always amazed that people want to argue over a dime or a quarter when they print stuff, but they do. And if they're kind of a, maybe I don't want to say cheap like me, but they don't have the printer at home because they don't want to pay for it. They probably don't want to pay for stuff prints they don't need at the library. And some are just like, well, I'm glad you're here. And that they're happy to pay for it because they don't have to have the printer at home. Other people will want to argue with you that I don't need these 3 pages and I shouldn't have to pay for them. And we're talking 30 cents, but they're willing to stand there all day and fight for it if you let them. So I try and take advantage of some of the features in the printing to avoid as much conflict as I can.
Yeah, a lot of planning ahead to make sure that anything that they could possibly argue with, or to avoid any of those things, put all of this out there and do all of this prep work ahead of time, all of this setup ahead of time.
Yeah, which gets back to what I said about the signage. We charge, right. This is how much. Have it up above the printer, so when that argument starts, you can point at the sign, and hopefully you're on the high ground now and they're on the low ground, and they will just realize they need to pay for their stuff and not fight with you for it.
Not reading the sign is not an excuse.
Yep. This is a little bit of a geeky one here on printing best practices. So I don't know how many people have been setting up printers in the libraries, but so Microsoft and the printer manufacturers got together and they created a product called WSD, Web Services for Devices. And why they did that was people were buying printers, especially when the printers came with a network attachment where you could have the printer attached to your network and share it. You had to know how to go in and set up a TCP/IP network address on the printer to make it to work. And what was happening is people were buying these network attachable printers and they didn't understand networking. They couldn't figure out how to get it to work and they were returning them. So Microsoft and the printers got together and said, we got to come up with something that you can just plug the thing in and it works. So they came up with web service for devices. And when this first came out, it was terrible. It just was awful. When I used to set up new printers in my corporate environment, the first thing I would do is go into the printer menu and turn off WSD and set it up old school with the TCP port and just get on with their lives because it was so bad. So for home use, WSD has come a long ways and it's great. You can take a printer out of the box. You can connect it to your Wi-Fi network. You can plug it into your Ethernet network. And then you go into Windows printers and devices. You just say, look for a printer. It finds it. It downloads the drivers, sets everything up for you. And for the most part, it works very, very well. In a small library where you have just the one printer, maybe two, again, it makes setting up the printer super easy, works very well. It allows patrons to bring in their own laptops or tablets, and if they have their laptop and it's Windows, it allows them to literally just connect up to your printer and print directly from their laptop, which is fantastic. And WSD is great until it's not. When you start to have troubles with WSD, figuring out what's wrong and how to fix it can just drive you crazy. So for the most part, it's going to work fine. But when it goes south, because it's all under the covers, you can't really see what it's doing. Diagnosing what's wrong with WSD can just be a nightmare. So that is why a lot of people still do it the old school way and set up the printer with a TCP/IP port. If you lease a copier from a business equipment company, I guarantee you they are going to come in and set it up using the old TCP/IP process because it's bulletproof. Once it's done, it's done. It just works fantastic. Where the get you on that can be is if you upgrade the library's network equipment, and the network equipment uses a different default network address segment. What may happen is you bring the new network up and now you can't print anymore because your printer copier is set with a network address on what the old network offered, and it's not being recognized by the new network, and you have to go change that. I've run into that when I've gone into libraries and upgraded their networks for them. And what I usually do when I do that is I take a snapshot on my phone of their current network settings, and then when I have the new gear up and running, I go in and change the defaults to match how their network was set up previously. Then I don't have to go touch their copiers and printers if they've been set up the old school TCP/IP way. I still do it, obviously, a test print from a smattering of their computers just to make sure it's working okay. But that's one thing to be aware of. You get the new network gear and now you can't print anymore. It's probably because your printer was set up the old school way, TCP/IP. I still prefer to do it that way. If it's something I'm going to be maintaining, when I help libraries install a new printer, usually even me these days, I'll just use the WSD to get up and running. It makes life easy. WSD allows us to do that duplicate thing I was talking about between black and white and color printers, just like the old TCP/IP method did. So we still have the capability to do that. It doesn't cause any issues. The one thing I will caution you on is when you're installing printers on a PC, Windows may pop up at the end of that installation process. Do you want to share this printer? If this is a network attached printer, do not share the printer, because what that's going to do is cause another device to appear, another shareable printer to appear on your network, because the printer's not only attached to the network, but you've told Windows that you want to share the setup on your PC with the network. So we don't need to share printers anymore. That was an old feature from before printers had network connections, or you bought a low-end printer that didn't have the network port, where you would connect it with a USB device connection to your PC, and then you could share that with the network, and it'll let you use kind of cheaper consumer grade printers that didn't have the network capability with everybody on the network by sharing it from your printer. That also creates a bit of a security vulnerability where you've opened up your PC to share that printer. So very rarely would we ever do that anymore. So if you get prompted to share the printer on your Windows computer, you shouldn't have to do that. And I recommend obviously not doing that. A lot of the printers these days, especially if you're buying the all-in-ones, they come with a huge suite of printer software that allows you to scan from the PC, to fax from the PC, or scan to the PC, fax from the PC. Tell it what kind of printing you're doing, whether it's pictures or documents, and then the printer will automatically change its configuration on the fly to give you the best quality color picture print, or go into econo mode to give you the cheapest black and white prints. Generally, I don't recommend installing all that printer razzmatazz software on the patron public computers, because usually what that also includes is you constantly get alerts from the printer. So if you're sitting in a patron public computer and all this stuff is loaded, you're going to keep getting an alert that my cyan is low. You're going to keep getting an alert that somebody else printed something to the printer. And you're going to be getting all these alerts anytime anything happens with the printer, while maybe you just want to sit in the library and just use the computer to browse the web. So we do not install all that software on a computer that the public's going to use. Could there be some value in being able to scan where the patron can go up to the all-in-one device, put their document in and scan it to the PC they're using? Yes, but they have to know how to use that, and that software is not universal in Windows. It's unique to everybody else's different type of printer or copier. So they're probably not going to be able to figure out or know how to do it. This gets back to one of the great options when you buy a new one is, does it have the ability to do scan to email or scan to a USB drive? Let's flip to that. So obviously we're going to talk about, have the multifunction document feeder. Scan to USB drive, that's where the printer has a little USB port. You can put your personal USB drive in and you can scan whatever you're scanning. So you go from what we call a hard copy printed form to a soft copy electronic form. You can scan it right to the USB drive. It's a feature you definitely want. Scan to email, I like even better. It allows the patron to come in and scan the document they have, and they can put in their email address and it sends it automatically to their email. So all they have to do is on their phone or at home later on, they can just go into their email and the document's right there. They can then forward it to whoever they want, or if it's a document they came in, they printed it at the library, you got the blue pen, they borrowed your blue pen, signed everything, scanned it to email. Now they have a document that's in their email. They can forward it to whoever they need to forward it to. When I was at my first library, we got a new printer that had the ability to do scan to email, and our faxing volume just dropped because people come in and they're like, I need to print this, sign this, and fax this. And then we say, can you email it? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And they would call their lawyer's office or their financial planner's office and say, hey, the library asked me if you'll take it by email. And they'd be like, yeah, we're fine with email. And so instead of faxing it, they would just scan it and email it right to their financial person, and they were done. And the financial people liked it too, because they didn't get the stuff coming off their fax machine that they were going to probably scan back into their system at their office. So it's a great, great feature to have. And I highly recommend looking for it if you're buying something new. Again, we talked about loading the printer scanning software on the PCs. Probably not on the patron public PCs. There may be a good value to it on the staff computers. So staff is getting the alerts that, hey, the printer's out of paper, the printer's low on paper, the printer's low on ink, so on and so forth. One thing you will run into, and this just would drive me crazy at my libraries, and I have my picture there where you see I have the red circle and the green circle. What would happen is when people were using our scanner, they would want to grab and lift it up by that document feeder tray. And if they keep doing it, it will break. I guarantee you it will break.
That's very delicate, yeah.
Yes, they're not sturdy. They're made to support papers for the scanner. They're not made to have the whole heavy lid of the copier printer picked up and opened and closed by it. So can you keep them from doing it? No, but what I did is I used to make a big lift here label that was right above where you see my green circle is, that would say lift here, and maybe even a sign by it says, please do not lift by the document feeder, and to try and minimize that of happening. It still happened. One time I was lucky and I was able to 3D print some hinges and fix it myself. The other time I had to order the parts for the printer and repair it because they had literally snapped the tray off the printer, the document feeder, by lifting it by that thing. So if you're going to go with one of these all-in-ones and you have people that are going to be using, hopefully they don't lift the lid to scan anymore. They should just drop their stuff in the document feeder, whether it's 1 page or 50, and just use it.
Feed it
But you
through.
would have the people that come in that are used to the old copiers, and all they know to do is lift that lid up and put their piece of paper in it. So I really recommend, having that labeled, or maybe you keep it behind the desk and they have to hand you their stuff, and because you're going to lift it right, you're not going to break it. But be very, very cautious that if that's out where the public can do it, I guarantee you they're just going to grab that thing by that sheet feeder tray and be lifting that heavy lid up and down with it, and it will break if they keep doing that. Faxing. This is kind of a dying thing. It's nice that libraries can still offer it. Most libraries charge by the page for faxing. I commonly see $1 per page, and I've had customers like, $1 per page, that's outrageous. Well, it's not when we're paying anywhere from 35 to 50 bucks a month for the analog phone line to be able to do it. And if you're hardly faxing anymore, that's a big cost, especially for a small library. And then often we have to help them do it. So you've got staff time involved in the faxing too. So I don't think that's an outrageous charge for faxing, especially as little as it's done anymore. Lots of the big libraries I worked at, the library I worked at in Connecticut, when I worked for OPL, we had a company that had a faxing kiosk in our library, and we had nothing to do with it. We provided a phone line, and the patron was literally on their own if they wanted to use it. It had a big sheet of instructions that were part of the kiosk. If they had any issues, they had to call the 800 number for help. They had to have a credit card. We sold faxing cards at the front desk, so they could come up and they could get a card, and then depending on how many pages they were going to fax, so the first page was always $1. I think then they could buy a card that would let them fax 3 pages, where it was like $1 for the first page and then 75 cents for the next 2 pages, so on and so forth. And that's where I've seen a lot of large libraries go, where they just kind of are willing to let this for-profit kind of take it over, because it's just not hardly done anymore.
It's so interesting because I do still see sometimes out on social media someone make the comment like, faxing, who faxes anymore? And then always library people pipe up and say,
Yeah.
Actually, you'd be surprised. There are people coming into our library that, for whatever reason, there are certain law firms or doctor's office or something that for some reason require a fax. I mean, yes, because you mentioned earlier, what about, can you just scan to email and email it to them? Will they accept that? And for some reason, still some places will not. They prefer, I don't know what the reason is.
Yeah, I don't understand
But
that. I
it's
saw
still
less
out
and
there.
less of it. I was a notary in Connecticut, so I had a lot of people bringing in legal forms, and I would say maybe 1 in 4 would actually be required to fax the document in to their law firm or their brokerage or their bank. But that had really gone down. Almost everybody was accepting documents electronically
I don't
anymore.
know what the difference is between a fax copy and an emailed and then printed out copy. Neither. I think the concern is something that's emailed could be modified in between or edited, and it's not the actual original that came from the one that was put in the fax machine. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And that argument is like, well, they faxed it from the library. So it's not their personal phone number that we use a lot now to identify ourselves with stuff on the web. So I was surprised is that I actually still ran into it as much as I did in Connecticut. Is a notary that most places just weren't accepting the documents scanned and emailed. But there occasionally, yeah, occasionally we did. So if you're still offering fax at your library, fantastic. When people need it, they need it, but don't feel bad about charging a reasonable cost, because those phone lines, those old copper analog phone lines, are expensive. And if you're a library that's migrated to what we call voice over IP, where your phone calls are delivered over the internet in the library, and you're going to offer faxing, a lot of times you have to buy an additional device for your network equipment that allows you to convert one of those digital lines to an analog line so you can fax over it. So not only are you, yeah, it just,
I didn't
like
know
I
there was
said,
devices that could do that. That
yeah,
someone else commented and said, oh,
and
so we
then
don't have to
there,
have the extra phone line to pay for.
right. And then there are some online services. I don't really see anything out there, and this really gets kind of into a trust issue also. There's online services where you can upload their document and they will fax it on your behalf. But again, if these are sensitive papers, sensitive documents, do you trust them? It's kind of like using the free PDF converters online. You know, if it's just a blank form, sure, why not? But if it's a form that you've put a lot of personal information, like even credit card information on, you're just going to upload this to
Some
somebody to
random
turn it
thing.
into a PDF for you, and it's just this on. Yeah, it's just, I'm reluctant to trust anybody like that if there's sensitive information on the document. So again, if you're offering faxing, fantastic. I'm sure you're not doing it as much as you have been. I mean, maybe I would be surprised too, but it's definitely in its twilight years, I think. One thing, if you have a fax machine hooked up, I don't know, does anybody still receive fax spam anymore? So in the old days,
Yeah, we used to get
you
that
had a,
here. Yeah, there'd be some new things on the fax machine up front overnight. Yeah, like you said here.
so in the old days of faxing, before we had spam email, we had spam faxing. And what would happen is spammers would send advertisements to your fax number. So you would come into work in the morning, and if you left your fax machine on overnight, you would have a pile of faxes from weight loss and just the crap you get with email spam, but it would be faxes. And so we got in the habit at the libraries I worked off, we turned the fax machine off at nights to avoid that as much as we could. We could still get them during the day, and if we could see what number it came from, we could go into our fax machine and we could block that number, you know, if we continued to get fax spam from that number. So I don't know if anybody sees that anymore today. We had one library where we had a person set up a business, and for whatever reason, they use the library's fax number as their business fax number. And then we continue to receive faxes for their business after that person had shut their business off and moved away from the community. And it was frustrating because obviously we're paying for the toner and the paper. And so I don't know if fax spam is still a thing. It used to be really irritating. I just, since we're talking about faxing, I brought that up so I could maybe get that off my chest. So I don't know if anybody still sees it anymore. Again, we used to turn the fax machine off at night. The other issue I see with libraries that are still offering faxing is they're trying to share their a phone line with it. So the library's phone line is also the same phone line they use for faxing. So if they're doing an outbound fax, their phone line is busy. That's not the end of the world. Where it gets frustrating is if you're trying to call the library and it rings and rings and rings, and then the fax machine picks up, and then possibly that prevents their voicemail from picking up because the fax machine is picking up. If you're going to have a fax machine set up and you're going to share that phone line with the front desk, at least make sure your fax machine's on the delayed answer mode where it has to ring a bunch of times before the fax machine tries to answer. And if that fax machine pickup is preventing voicemail access for the library, what you may want to do, and most fax machines have the feature, is you can turn fax answering off, where your fax machine was strictly outbound faxing. It will no longer attempt to answer phone calls to it. back in the day where people were literally having stuff faxed to the library and coming and picking it up, we couldn't do that. But these days, I think you could definitely get away with shutting off your fax machine from answering phone calls, and it's strictly used just for an outbound process. Again, we want to make sure that device has that multi-page document feeder. Nobody wants to stand there, especially when you're trying to do a fax where it's engaging using the phone line, where you have to lift the lid, put in a page, scan it, take it out, put in the next page. You want that multi-page document feeder. Again, load printer faxing software on the PCs. Faxing, I would say absolutely not. There's just so little of it. There's going to be so less of it going forward. I just don't really see any need to have the printer's faxing capability where you can fax a document from the PC directly through it. I just don't see any value for it. Maybe there might be. Generally, if you've installed the package on your staff computers, you've got the whole kit and caboodle anyway, but definitely not on patron public computers. So that covers our presentation for printing and anything. I also have quite a few other NCompass Live technology presentations I've done at this point on different technology topics for the library. And as Krista likes to point out, we do get CE credit for attending today, or if you go in and watch one of these, you can submit it for CE credit. And so take advantage of those that we've already got in the can that are available for you for viewing. And I'm ready if anybody has any further questions for me today.
Yeah, these are all in our show archives, so you can find them in there, and I'll show you where that is in just a minute here. Does anybody have any other questions you want to ask of Sherm? Anything you want to know more about? Anything you're doing at your library that you want to share? You can type into the questions section of your GoToWebinar interface. This is very good, of course. All the sessions you do, Sherm, are great with very useful, very important information. I think a lot of our libraries, especially our small ones, which we are so glad that we have you on staff to help them now, don't know a lot about how to do these things, don't have the time to figure it out. So putting this into like a nice 1 hour concise session that can get them all the info they need is great. We do have a kind of question here. Someone's saying thank you, Sherman, Krista, you're welcome. About scanning issues, are there things to be concerned about with scanning, or did they miss that in the presentation? I know you did have a scanning page.
I don't really have any concerns on scanning. I don't know if anybody's ever had anybody come in and try and counterfeit money using the copier in the library. I have run into that where we've had individuals come in, and we had a guy that had bought like fancy parchment paper and was making copies, and one of my staff came back to me and said, hey, I think he's copying money. So I went out front, and sure enough, he was photocopying money onto snazzy paper, and I made him stop. I confiscated what he had and told him this is illegal, and if I catch him doing it again, we will simply call the police next time, and shredded his stuff. And he tried to argue with me he was making play money for his kids. We both know that wasn't that wasn't what was going on. So I've had that occur twice. I've had people attempt to use the library copier to make counterfeit money. I didn't call the police on them. I just confiscated their stuff and shredded whatever they had completed at that point and kicked them out.
Wow, that is brave, coming to like the public library right out there in the public to do that.
You know, nothing surprises me anymore. We had a guy come in and just start printing child porn on the
printing it out. Wow.
And yeah, I came to the desk. We saw it. We immediately called the police. They showed up. We said, yeah, it's this guy. That's where he's sitting. And they arrested him on the spot, took what he printed as evidence, and we never saw him again. So yeah,
people are not very bright sometimes.
Just when you think you've seen it all, and something comes up that you just can't hardly believe it's happening.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you. All right. Any other last minute desperate questions? Type in the questions section. We got another thank you for the information. I appreciate the sessions. You're welcome. Yeah. I'm going to change presenter control to my screen so I can do my little wrap up here. But if you have any other questions, yeah, we got a few more minutes here. I'll be just showing where we have our archives and whatnot. So type into that question section if you want to ask anything. What did I do? Oh, I clicked on the Facebook. Go back. There we go. Okay. So as I said, we do have our shows are all recorded. If you use whatever is your search engine of choice and type in the name of our show, NCompass Live, you'll find our pages. We're the only thing called that on the internet so far. Yay. We have our upcoming shows here, and then underneath that link is for our archive shows. Most recent one at the top of the page here. Today's show will be here. Will be done by the end of the day tomorrow at the latest. Everyone who attended today's show and registered for today's show will get an email from me letting you know when it's ready. It gets that we also send that out onto our mailing list we have here in Nebraska, so you'll get that email as well. We also have, as you saw, I clicked on it here, a Facebook page. So if you do like to use Facebook, give us a like over there. We post about reminders. Here's a reminder to log in today's show, introducing our presenters, and then when the recordings are available, we will post on here as well. Elsewhere on social media, this is the page for NCompass Live. We use the hashtag, a little abbreviation of our show name, NComp Live, on the Library Commission's Instagram and anywhere else that we may be using it, and you can as well if you want to. So here for our show archives, you can do a search. Let me see if I haven't done this before. If I type in Sherm, we'll probably get, yeah, all the shows that we've ever had you do, and actually even from before you were on a staff person here.
Oh, wow, that's going the way back machine.
Yeah, yes. So anything that Sherm has done for us, you can find it on here. As you can see, some of these shows are very old. We do have all of our show archives here. It is a very big page, so I do recommend definitely using a search feature if you're looking for something on a particular topic, because this is our full show archives going back to when the show first premiered, which was in January 2009. So this is the 17th year of our show. Yeah, so, but we always have all of them here. This is something libraries do. We keep things for historical purposes. And as long as we have somewhere to host all of our shows, which right now is the Library Commission's YouTube channel, we will always have them available for you up there. You can do, if you want to look at the full page, just the most recent 12 months, or you can, and search just those, or if you look at the full show archives, if you notice here, you could scroll. Yeah. So just do also pay attention to the original broadcast date. If you ever watch any of our show recordings, everything has the original date there. Many things we find to watch stand the test of time, still be good, useful information, but some things will become old and outdated. Resources may have changed drastically, might not exist anymore. Links might be broken. People will definitely work at different places, like Sherm, than when they might have presented for us 10 years ago. So just be aware of how old something is when you are watching it. All right, I don't see any other questions, so I think we'll wrap things up. I do not have something on the schedule yet for next week. I might be taking the week off. I'll decide that in the next couple of days. But we do have our shows already for the rest of the month, and in August we will definitely be back in 2 weeks, if I don't do something for next week, to talk about library policies, another very important issue. Scott Childers, who's the executive director of our Southeast Library System, one of our regional systems here in Nebraska, is going to talk about creating and implementing in your own library policies at your public library to make sure that they work for you and your patrons. So sign up for that and any of our other upcoming shows, and keep an eye on the schedule here to see when new ones are added. We're here pretty much every Wednesday morning. All right. Thank you everyone for being here. Thanks so much, Sherm. But we'll see you probably sometime soon and another topic pops up that we need to present about.
Yep. It's been real nice with the libraries and get their feedback on, questions they're asking me and stuff. It's just kind of teed this up for us. For NCompass Live subjects, as I can take all the questions I get asked, and well, a lot of people are looking to buy a printer, so we should probably do an NCompass Live about it.
Great way to find out what's going on out there, traveling out to our libraries, yeah. And we're so happy to have you doing it. So are they.
Yep.
All right, thank you everybody.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you on a future episode of NCompass Live. Bye-bye.